All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, I remember way back in the 2010-2011 NBA basketball season, basketball aficionados like myself thought that Derrick Rose was in the process of revolutionizing how we thought about the point guard position. We had never seen a player with as much fast twitch muscle fiber as Derrick Rose displayed on a night-to-night basis. And of course, what came along with that was the quote-unquote good guy image that the Chicago Bulls front office was trying to push for him. Well, just like his body collapsed underneath him, so did that fake image. And he went through a process of time where he had to come to learn himself, both his new body, and also he had to come to terms with the fact that people were no longer going to consider him the so-called nice guy. And we've seen many top NBA players be put through that nice guy marketing strategy. It's normally a bevy of parameters that they have to check off. Number one, they're mama's boy. Number two, they cry all the time. Number three, they always claim to be involved in foundations and going back to their community. And some of those things are very good things, but other things are irrelevant, like whether or not you venerate your mother. We've seen Kevin Durant be put through pretty much the same protocol. And we've also seen him decide, at least in the last couple of years, that he's going to resist that level of marketing. And that's good. Now, in regards to Derrick Rose, we've seen him hit the depths, and now it seems as if he's starting to have a rejuvenation. So they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
We had a vintage D Rose sighting last night in the T-Wolves 3-point win over the Jazz. Derrick put on a show, dropping a career-high 50 points. The entire NBA took notice, blowing up social media, showing him a lot of love. This is the first time he scored over 40 points since 2011. Rose, your thoughts?
I worked my ass off, bro.
Let me say this very quickly. Derrick Rose is in the process of becoming a better overall basketball player right now than he was even in his MVP season. He's a better shooter, he's a better decision maker, and he's a better passer. And there are certain players in the history of the NBA that were almost too fast for their own good. And they actually became better players when they lost a step. Allen Iverson was like that. He was a better player in the mid-2000s, the early to mid-2000s, than he was in the late 90s when he first came into the NBA. Because when Iverson first came into the NBA, he was almost too fast. Same thing with Derrick Rose. Now, Kyrie Irving seems to be a bit of a hybrid. He also utilizes a lot of the fast twitch muscle action that he's been gifted with. And we also see that, much like Derrick Rose, he's had chronic knee issues. The difference is that there are far more wrinkles and nuance to Kyrie's offensive game. So we'll see if he's able to reel it back a little bit. Just because your car can hit 180 miles per hour does not mean that you should go that fast.
I did this for the franchise, the organization, the fans, everybody, man. I wouldn't be.
This dude done turned into a Rasta man.
Wouldn't be able to play the way I
play. Vintage Derrick Rose, all choked up. What'd you take away from that?
Well, first of all, obviously everyone feels good for Derrick Rose, a guy who, when he was in high school, NBA ballers would travel far and wide to watch him play. And when
I'm not surprised. He is a freakish athlete, or at least he was. Prior to the knee injuries, he was as athletic as any basketball player that I ever seen, including Michael Jordan.
And when he was 22 years old and he wins an MVP award, and let's not forget, the year he tore his ACL, he had made improvements as a point guard over his MVP season.
The great Isaiah Thomas stated in the aftermath of Derrick Rose winning the MVP award back in 2011 that he was jealous of Derrick Rose. And in Isaiah Thomas, we're talking about a person who is, by most accounts, the greatest little man to ever play in the NBA and a two-time world champion. Why did he say that about Derrick Rose? Because, like Derrick Rose, Isaiah Thomas was a Chicagoan, a native Chicagoan. And he wanted to be drafted by the Chicago Bulls like Derrick Rose was. Isaiah Thomas wanted to be that person from his hometown who could lead his team out of the depths like he saw Derrick Rose doing. That's why he stated that at one point he actually was jealous of Derrick Rose because Derrick Rose was living out his own dream.
He was a phenom. He had the best quicks in the game, I think including everyone. He had the most fast, twitchy kind of stuff, the stuff that jumped off at you as different than everyone else.
Absolutely. He was even more explosive than Westbrook.
So to see him get back and have a career high is amazing. Congratulations to Derrick Rose. What I saw is a guy who makes Jimmy Butler more expendable. And it's not just because...
Not quite. What's going to make Jimmy Butler expendable is that the Timberwolves are not going to be a threat in the playoffs. So eventually I think that Tom Thibodeau is going to have to come to terms with the fact that no, you're not going to get multiple high first-round draft picks for Jimmy Butler. Glenn Taylor eventually is going to give a call to Tom Thibodeau and say, look, I'm starting to realize why the Chicago Bulls front office did not like you so much, because you're hard-headed. Trade Butler. He's making our very insecure, neophyte, quote-unquote superstar young center Karl Anthony Towns feel even more insecure about himself than he normally does. You got to get this guy out of here expeditiously. But no, Derrick Rose is not playing well enough to make Jimmy Butler expendable. Not at all. As of right now, Derrick Rose is playing like the person who's going to win the Sixth Man of the Year award. But no, he's not good enough to start right now, or at least to take the place of Jimmy Butler.
He shows you he can carry a scoring load again if he can stay healthy, knock wood. It's because now they may not need to get a live body back in a deal. It may not be we need all these draft picks plus Eric Gordon from the Rockets or something like that, because they have a guy in Derrick Rose. This is not just a favor that was done to him by his old coach. Hey, yeah, come on.
Let me say this about the Houston Rockets. They're playing so poorly that eventually they may be willing to include an Eric Gordon and 4 first-round draft picks for Jimmy Butler. Because their general manager, Daryl Morey, is starting to remind me of the character of Captain Ahab in Moby Dick. With the Golden State Warriors being Moby Dick, he's willing to risk his life to have the opportunity to put his team in a viable position to defeat the Warriors. So eventually he may be willing to give up a couple of live bodies on the Rockets in addition to those 4 first-round draft picks. If I'm Minnesota, I'm still not making that trade, though, because what are we going to do with 4 first-round draft picks back-to-back who are all going to be picked somewhere around 25th or 26th in the draft? That's not going to help us.
Come on, thanks for the memories. This is, oh wow, we have a guy who can score 50. We can just take the draft picks. So there's that. But there's another interesting component here, or aspect of this, Stephen A., which is Karl Anthony Towns' best games have come this season when Jimmy Butler didn't play. And the reason that Jimmy Butler didn't get the max extension from this team.
The problem with Karl Anthony Towns is that he's soft. And more people are starting to come to that conclusion. I said that from last season. And now many of these so-called professional NBA pundits are starting to figure it out as well, that he's just soft. And there are players that come through the NBA like that. They're very talented, but they're just soft. And he's one of those guys. He's soft. And there's not much that you can do about that.
Was because it's Karl Anthony Towns' team. He's the #1 pick and the guy with the highest ceiling. They've properly identified him as the future. Now, I understand giving him the supermax, just give him as much as you can. Butler must have lost his mind when Wiggins got the extension he did, because Wiggins ain't very good. Mm-hmm. But and clearly not.
No, Wiggins is not very good, especially his motor and his mentality. But the reason why Butler did not get that extension with the supermax or for the maximum, the bottom line of that is that he's a 30-year-old player with knee issues. It's unfortunate for him, but that's the fact of the matter.
Not as good as Butler. But if Karl Anthony Towns plays his best without Jimmy Butler on the floor, then you got to move Jimmy Butler. And if Derrick Rose can do this even on some nights, then you don't need to get an actual player back in the deal, making a deal more likely.
Well, that's what you peeled from it. I get it. What I peeled for it, I was incredibly happy for Derrick Rose because, listen, there are things that go on, and a lot of times people forget that professional athletes are human beings. This is a guy that's been through an awful lot.
He's also a guy who's put himself through an awful lot, quote unquote. I mean, the fact of the matter is that he pretty much confessed to trying to organize a train being ran on an internet thotty. At the end of the day, a lot of that was due to his Luciferian ties in one of those Chicago gangs. That's just the fact of the matter.
The kind of stuff that we don't need to be talking about on the air because it's his business, it's not ours. But the thing that I'm saying to you is that people in NBA circles knows that this guy has been through a lot. More importantly, they know how highly sensitive he is. And so because of that, he's one of the nicest guys in the world that you could ever meet as a professional athlete. He truly, truly is. And so it's impossible to root against him. You look at him last night, I didn't take away from it that it makes Jimmy Butler expendable, because Jimmy Butler's been balling. The fact of the matter is
Yeah, I'm not quite sure where Kellerman is getting that from. Why would Derrick Rose having a 50-point outing make Jimmy Butler any more or less expendable? At the end of the day, you're not going to expect Derrick Rose to give you 50 on a consistent basis. When I say consistent, meaning 2 or 3 more times this season. I would not even expect Derrick Rose to average 20 points a game. I mean, if he does, cool. But this is a person who's in the process of trying to rejuvenate his body and his career. I doubt if he's going to play all 82 games this season.
When he's been on the court, he's been better than anybody else that they've had this season. Jimmy Butler has been big time. Jimmy Butler's looking for that 5-year max deal from somebody. I don't think he'll get that. But the bottom...
No, well, he deserved it, to be quite frank with you. Jimmy Butler is not a top echelon player. And then you add to that he loves to stir the pot. I mean, I just don't see a team giving him that amount of money. Maybe the Miami Heat. But Pat Riley is such a shrewd businessman. I don't see him doing that either.
Bottom line is that that's the kind of thing that he's looking for, and it ain't going to be from Minnesota. But when you look at Derrick Rose, don't tell me would you see a guy that makes Jimmy Butler expendable, particularly if he's healthy. Because the one thing that we need to say is that Derrick Rose ain't going to be healthy. And I'm not...
Thank you, sir.
Not saying he's going to get hurt, like literally he's just going to fall out tomorrow. I'm saying he is not at the stage in his career where he can go out there and give you 35 minutes a night, be that starting point guard for you, etc., etc.
Absolutely not. Right now with Derrick Rose, if you're Tom Thibodeau, you're hoping that he's the best sixth man in the NBA. You're hoping that he can give you this year what you had hoped Jamal Crawford was going to give you last year.
One of the reasons that you see people cheering him on so much is because
the real disappointment is that bum-ass Jeff Teague.
Because they know how hard he worked, the kind of work that he put in just to get himself healthy compared to what he looked like last year. Remember, he only played 25 games last year, had to leave the Cleveland Cavaliers for a little while for personal reasons. But psychologically as well as physically, he's had an uphill climb.
And it seems when he left the Cavs, it was over. Because it's like you can't stay on the court, you can't stay healthy. The game, much like what happened to Carmelo, a little bit different in terms of style of play, but you know, he dribbles a lot, he monopolizes the ball. The game has changed out from under his feet in like the 8.
Well, the good news for Derrick Rose is that, unlike Carmelo Anthony, he seems to have adapted to this new style of play. He can pull up off the dribble from 3, and he's made himself quite a good threat from the 3-point land, which Carmelo Anthony has not. Why is that? Because Derrick Rose is in great shape. Carmelo Anthony is not. It's very obvious when you look at D. Rose that his body fat is down. He looks very light on his feet.
8 years, almost a decade since that traumatic injury, the ACL. So you thought at this point, and you're leaving the team, and you have personal stuff going on. It just looked like the end. The moment last night was about Derrick Rose. Obviously, congratulations, Derrick Rose. The big takeaway is it's about Karl Anthony Towns. It's not about Rose.
Of what?
It's not about Butler.
In terms
Karl
of what?
Anthony Towns plays better when Jimmy Butler isn't
Karl
there.
Anthony.
Well, here's the problem, Max Kellerman. You need Karl Anthony Towns to be your alpha. And I'm a firm believer that alphas are born, they're not made. As I stated in the videos that I've done on Jimmy Butler actually wants Karl Anthony Towns to tell him, give me the motherfucking ball, man. And if he's not going to tell him that, Jimmy Butler's not going to respect him until he does. As a matter of fact, Jimmy Butler actually wants Karl Anthony Towns to challenge him to a fist fight over control of the team. That's the only way that Jimmy Butler's going to stand down. And if Karl Anthony Towns is not willing to do that, then he's not an alpha. He's just not. He's not that guy. He's not Joel Embiid. Joel Embiid is an alpha.
Anthony Towns, just the previous game against the Los Angeles Lakers, had 25 and 16 with Jimmy Butler on the court. Now,
he's a great player.
He's a great talent. He's not a great player. There are very, very few great players in the NBA. Karl Anthony Towns is a great talent. He's not a great player.
Previous games he was struggling, but you know what? I get tired of Jimmy Butler getting blamed for that nonsense. Here's the reality of the situation. Think about this. If you're, as you would call, because I'm not as corny as you, and I'm not going to sit up there.
You're not as corny?
Oh,
you think in a corny contest I beat you?
In a corny, in every,
you don't even have to try.
You'd beat him in a prescription medication contest, Max Kellerman. You beat him there.
Every day.
Allegedly.
Day and every night. I'm still working on your style. First of all, I'm proud to see you having a different kind of tie. Congratulations with that. Here's the reality of the situation. When you look at Jimmy Butler with the Minnesota Timberwolves, and to use your words, if you're a baller, you know how Mike's like that, baller.
That's
Excuse me. If a guy calls you out, and basically this reports all over the place. He don't have but so much respect for you because he don't think you committed, and he don't know if you're that dude. How you gonna react to that? You know what you're supposed to do? You're supposed to ball. You ain't supposed to shrink. You understand, beneath that kind of...
Let me say this very quickly. Stephen A. Smith is making the assertion that after Jimmy Butler called out Karl Anthony Towns, basically calling him soft, that Karl Anthony Towns is supposed to respond by balling. Actually, no, he's not. He was supposed to respond by challenging Jimmy Butler for who's going to lead that team. And he was supposed to challenge him in that first practice when Jimmy Butler came in and went ham on the whole team. That's what he was supposed to do. Because at the end of the day, Karl Anthony Towns is a center. He's not going to have the basketball in his hands as much as Jimmy Butler. So the pecking order for who's going to get the most touches and who's going to be the quote-unquote alpha of the team has to be determined in training camp. It's not going to be based off of who balls the best on the basketball floor during the regular season, because by then, Jimmy Butler has already cemented control of the team mentally and psychologically. What it boils down to is that Karl Anthony Towns just might not be built to be the person that we might all want him to be. He has alpha talent, but he does not have an alpha personality. Very similar to a KD. Except I don't think that anyone would ever have called Kevin Durant soft on the basketball floor. Karl Anthony Towns, he actually exhibits softness on the basketball floor.
Kind of pressure, supposed to rise up to it. Excuse me, who the hell are you talking to? This is my team, this is my franchise, I'm the face of this franchise. And oh, by the way, let me show you why. As opposed to Jimmy Butler, who is a star. But it's not like it's LeBron James that called him out. It's not like it was Kobe that called him out, or MJ or somebody. Not even a Kevin Durant or somebody. We talking about Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler, mad respect and love for him. He's an all-star. He's a big-time player.
He's a third-tier star in the NBA, Jimmy Butler. He's on the higher rung. He's on the higher end of the third tier. But he's on the third tier. But what Stephen A. Smith is basically getting at is that you're letting a third rung, a third tier star in Jimmy Butler basically punk you. And you're not supposed to allow that, especially since by most approximations or, by most appraisals, Karl Anthony Towns is a second-tier star in the NBA. And supposedly he was supposed to be trending upwards towards the higher part of the second tier.
But Jimmy Butler calling out Karl Anthony Towns is not an excuse for Karl Anthony Towns to be struggling on a basketball court. I want to hear that.
It's not about calling out and therefore he's struggling. It's about the chemistry's not good. And you just said it. Jimmy Butler is not LeBron James or Kevin Durant. Mm-hmm. He is an incredible player and story in the sense that he comes out of nowhere to become this defensive stopper who doesn't need the ball. And then somehow goes from there to a 20-point-a-game plus scorer who's an all-star. Great for Jimmy Butler. But he ain't LeBron or KD. He's not an MVP caliber player. And as a result, if the chemistry is souring between him, and it's soured right away, and the franchise, who is Karl Anthony Towns, guess who the odd man out is?
Let me ask you a question. Jimmy Butler, after last night's game, is averaging 14 shots a game. That's like... I think Jimmy Butler's averaging 15 shots a game. Karl Anthony Towns is averaging 14 shots a game. Let me ask you a question. Whose fault is that?
You saying it's Karl Anthony Towns who wants to be
damn right.
Yeah, I agree. It is Karl Anthony Towns' fault. It's also Tom Thibodeau's fault. Because Tom Thibodeau is supposed to make sure that his best player is getting the ball in his hands the most. But I think that Tom Thibodeau looks at Karl Anthony Towns and he's waiting for Cat to assert himself in regards to the hierarchy of the team. So what we're basically witnessing before our very eyes is a comedy of errors. This is what happens when a team has the wrong personnel and the wrong coach.
You damn right.
He's the primary ball handler on the team.
Excuse me. You trying to tell me that Thibodeau only calls his number a certain amount of times a game, like 14 times a game? You trying to tell me that it's Jimmy Butler's fault? That Karl Anthony Towns only averages 14 shots a game?
I don't blame you.
Well, Stephen A. Smith, we know that Karl Anthony Towns does not bring the basketball up. But I know what you're getting at. I just think that you're getting at it the wrong way. What Karl Anthony Towns needs to do is to confront Jimmy Butler in the locker room. He needs to confront Tom Thibodeau, to be quite frank with you. He needs to be more confrontational so that he can salvage the credibility that he had at one time. So that he can attempt to salvage the formerly stellar reputation that he had in the NBA at one time. At one time, we were considering Karl Anthony Towns the #1 big man in the NBA.
blame you for missing this because it's nuance. Listen, if you frame it as a binary choice, right, it's either this or it's that, then does Karl Anthony Towns, is there some culpability there? Of course.
Well, that's all I'm saying.
That's not the point. The point is, if you have a situation where the chemistry is not right, of course there's two sides to blame. But which part are you going to extract? Who are you going to take out? Well, the future of the franchise?
It's not about taking anybody out. It's not like we're saying Karl Anthony Towns needs to go. The man just...
Well, actually, Stephen A. Smith, it is about taking somebody out. Because one of those two players has to go. They have to go. Because their personalities don't mesh and their playing styles do not mesh. So one of them has to go. So actually, yes, it is about somebody having to be moved. And once again, the reason why Karl Anthony Towns is so down in the dumps psychologically is because I believe he was told that if he signs his contract, he has nothing to worry about. If he signs his renewal contract or his extension, that he has nothing to worry about because Jimmy Butler is going to be moved off the team before the season starts. And he got hoodwinked by Tom Thibodeau. And that's why he's so upset right now, because he feels like he cannot trust Thibodeau.
Just re-up. He's got an extension. He's the face of the franchise. He's going to be there for years to come. The nuances is what you focus on because that allows you the license to not have a damn point. I'm going to make one for you. When you are the face of the franchise and you are the star of the franchise, excuse me, give me the damn ball. I watched Minnesota last year in the playoffs. I watched them sometimes during the regular season when Karl Anthony Towns was a stud. During the playoffs against Clint Capella, who was sitting across from me, Molly, lamenting how Karl Anthony Towns was playing? Who was saying, don't make me get tape? Who was saying, hold on. Who was saying Karl Anthony Towns has to want it, he has to demand the ball and embrace the challenge? Was that you?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I'm saying.
Here's the difference. It may be that when you make Karl Anthony Towns...
There's another nuance. It may be. What is, man? How about is? Give me is as opposed to what may be.
No, you're...
Well, what is, since you want what is, Stephen A. Smith, is that Karl Anthony Towns is one of the top 5 most talented potential superstars in the NBA right now. And you're on the verge of losing him mentally / psychologically if you don't do something about the current situation within your locker room. We could ask Karl Anthony Towns to be somebody that he's not. But there's going to have to be some adjustments made in regards to the Minnesota Timberwolves front office. That means that they're going to have to do a better job of understanding who Karl Anthony Towns is and what he's going to bring to the table. They also have to do a better job of understanding the type of pieces that they have to place around him. That's what it is. So, of course, Karl Anthony Towns had tremendous struggles in last year's playoffs. But I saw from that moment, and I made videos about this, I stated that there are going to be issues between Karl Anthony Towns, Thibodeau, and Jimmy Butler. Because I saw what it was all the way from last season. They did not fit in well together. Karl Anthony Towns does not have that mentality of a dog. He's a nice guy trying to act like a dog. When you watch them play, he gets overly hyped and he tries to act, overly masculine or whatever you want to call it whenever he blocks a shot or dunks a basketball because he's trying to conjure up that spirit of a dog, and that's not him by nature. It's just not. What Karl Anthony Towns is a beta. He's a very good beta. He could be a great beta on a team, but he's not going to be the alpha. But he needs an alpha who understands him. Jimmy Butler does not understand him. Karl Anthony Towns will play great with a Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving will be a perfect alpha for him. Damian Lillard will be a great alpha for him on that team because they're both very, very laid back and they'll take the big shots, but they'll also make a concerted effort to get Cat the ball in the first 3 quarters. That's what he needs.
You're saying is or is not. What I'm telling you is in this case there is nuance. It may be that Karl Anthony Towns, as the face of your franchise, as the centerpiece, ultimately is a dead end because of what you're pointing out. But
gentlemen,
with him there is the possibility for greatness.
I respect
with
that.
Jimmy Butler, you run into a dead end.
I respect that. My apology.
I agree with that, sir. I agree with that, Max Kellerman. Jimmy Butler's not going to get any better than he is right now.
Apologies. I was wrong. You were right, Max, because I thought on First Take, we talk about what we think is, as opposed to explaining the nuance of
I just told you what is.
No.
Stephen A. Smith, you're full of shit. What you guys do on First Take is you talk shit all damn day. And sometimes you talk about what is, sometimes you talk about things that may be, and you create all type of different hypothetical scenarios. So knock it off.
No, we said what is. I said what is. You talked about what may be. That's the difference. Let's move on. Let's move on.
All right. Derrick rose to the occasion. Now we know who's cornier. There's a lot happening today. Everybody's on one. Jimmy Butler.
No style.
Me.
But anyway, that's basically it on that in regards to the Derrick Rose situation. It's good to see him finally finding himself. I think that now he has the opportunity to put forth a very good last 5 or 6 years to his NBA career, because his mental has finally not only caught up to his physical, but has surpassed the physical. So good for him. Peace.